Don Dixon was one of the first Cincinnatians that I crossed paths with when I moved here in 1999 from Cleveland. Not really knowing anyone in Cincinnati when I moved here, I was invited to attend a Sunday service at Hyde Park Community United Methodist Church. When I heard Don's sermon, I felt engaged in a special way. He gave meaning to scriptures through personal examples and down-to-earth stories. I could really relate to his message. He made the word real. I've been fortunate since then, from my very first Sunday, to have benefited from his wisdom and commitment to what is best about the human spirit. Don will now perform the service of dedication.
This is a privilege for which I am very grateful. We gather here to dedicate a building. We gather to thank God, the great Creator, who gives us the vision and responsibility to build this magnificent building that in some ways is the epitome of all that Wesley services and all of the movement has moved toward in its life. All of the antecedents of this building were created in service to the people of Greater Cincinnati. There were many modest and quite heroic buildings that have preceded it. All were part of a benevolent outreach to persons who needed the ministries that the building would house. From Goodwill Church to the Elizabeth Gamble Deaconess Home and Training School on Wesley Avenue, to a residence in Leland Avenue that would be called the Lord House that accommodated 48 residents. More recent buildings, Wesley Hall on Lilienthal, and the Lincoln Crawford Home, as well as several other buildings used at various intervals. For example, in my short time knowing about Meals on Wheels, it came to operate out of the kitchen at Hyde Park Community United Methodist Church, and they were feeding 75, 100, maybe 125 when Steve and group came. Then we moved it over to the Erie building, and it went all the way up to 400 or 500, and that was too small. And so now here it is. There's a way of saying this is the epitome of all that started a long time ago. We come to this grand structure that sits on a hill, reminiscent of Jesus saying the church is like a city sitting on a hill, in order that it might shower its blessings of God on all who reside within its shadow and who benefit from its vision. But we really are not here just to dedicate a building. The building is the firm structure, the outside shell in which glorious spirit things happen. From this building will flow some of the most creative ministries imagined in the city of Cincinnati or anywhere else. Meals on Wheels under Wesley services with our very capable leader, Steve Smokler, has never been content to be bland. They've created an array of diets that meet the varying needs of a wide and grateful constituency. From special diets for diabetics to persons with renal conditions and on and on. From food for the companion of the resident, whether that companion be a cat or a dog, to delivery at noon for those who prefer it, to those who want to sleep in, evening meals. Weekly delivery if preferred, daily if preferred. In addition, 22 vehicles with trusted, gracious drivers for transportation to doctors, to hospitals. Ministry has been expanded to in-home cleaning services, assistance with handling financial affairs, and still a myriad of other ways to help people who are trying to live in their homes. All of this under the creative, ongoing vision of being in league with God, co-creators to make a better world by serving even the least of God's children. But we are not here just to dedicate a building. We are offering up to God and to the community a spiritual vision that believes benevolence is the ultimate expression of the love of the Creator, a love we have received or are invited to participate in for the good of all of creation. A few years ago, I was making calls in Children's Hospital. And on one of those rare days when I actually had my cell phone with me, and the phone rings, and it's Sandy Hyman from Mr. Linder's office. Sandy says, Mr. Linder would like for you to come to his office about 2 o'clock if you would. And I said, I'll be there. I had no idea what that was about. I got there at 2 o'clock, and he had prepared me to go to this special office which only has Cincinnati Red stuff in it. He knew how addicted I was and have been, back since the days of Wade Hoyt. Now, if you don't know who that is, ask your parents. They'll tell you. So I sit down, and I notice there's a couple African-American persons in there that I happen to know as ministers. They teach at one of the Bible colleges in town. It was explained to me that they were there to receive a gift from Mr. Linder, and 20 of them received gifts of $24,000 each because he found that they were not being paid at the little Bible college where they were working. And so he wanted me to be there to help celebrate that. And then he said, I know about Hyde Park Community United Methodist Church having the Meals and Wheel program of Wesley Services operate out of your building, and I wanted to give you some money too. And I real quickly said, but that does not cost us anything. That's done by Wesley Services. They're just housed in our building. We have some volunteers, but that's all. And he looked me in the eye and he says, somebody pays for the electric, someone pays for the water, someone pays for the building itself. And so he handed me an envelope. And then he handed me a second envelope and he said, give this to Steve Smokler. That envelope, he says, I want it to be used to make sure no one is ever turned away because they don't fit all the criterion for having food and services. I put the two envelopes in my pocket, went and got in my car. I was parked in his garage, got out on the street, pulled over as quick as I could, and got the envelopes out and looked to see what I'd gotten. So I pulled the envelopes out, and I opened up the one for Hyde Park Community United Methodist Church first. And I know what it is. I'm not sure whether I pre-opened Steve's envelope or not. But anyway, what I took to Steve was $400,000 and a concern that the money be used in some way to make sure no one is ever turned down. Steve assures me that that is the policy. Stephanie spoke of that too. The chairman of the trustees spoke of that. Still, it's impossible to talk about the spirit and purposes that live within this building without speaking of many persons who have made it possible. We who are here today, those who exercise leadership like Steve Smokler, Stephanie Tunison, and Ray Blankenship, know in our hearts there's been a myriad of other persons upon whose strong shoulders we are privileged to stand. L.H. Mayfield, alias the Vision Keeper, who never let you forget for a moment what you were about. Richard Scully, a minister from way back, who I happened to meet when he was very aged. John Say and his wife Laura. Louis and Louise Nippert. Virginia Ruhlman and the Helen Steiner Rice group. Gladys Mayfield, the Linders, Sue Doan, and many, many others. They are giants in our memories, and they carry over to the present. Yet it is not enough to mark the spots where the giants have stood. There are 92 employees here today in this organization. A host of volunteers. I remember at Hyde Park Church, Dick Adams, who no longer was mayor of Marymount, but he helped with Meals on Wheels. Ted Hattemer, Isabel Paul. These are the ones I would run into in the hallways of the church. All of the above, the buildings of the past, the spirit of love and service, the giants of the past, and the tremendous host of daily servants to God and creation, all together they bring us to this hallowed moment of dedication. Nothing that has preceded us is insignificant. So I ask you to hear with me words of dedication, which is in part a prayer from our hearts, an expression of our best feelings, and in part a prayer to God, who enables all of this, and who placed upon us the mantle of being creators with God of a better world. Then hear these words of dedication. God of the universe has created the earth and cast God's light upon it. Continue to create and bring us in this building that you have enabled to greater heights in an ever-expanding ministry to those whose needs beckon us to serve. As the Christ has taught us that service is most excellent of all endeavors, we place before you, O God, this day a plea for your blessing, this building, the spirit of benevolence that brought it forth, the great persons who have inspired and led, and the countless servants who make the daily ministry of love possible. Guide and direct us. Let this be today's epitome. Keep us open to the vision ever expanding, that we might be ever faithful to the call and the worthiness of your blessing. A further comment. I can't believe there could be a better sight than looking down on the city. It just thrilled me to death the first time Steve brought me here. But you know what? This certainly is today's epitome. But the real epitome is still out there. It's the things toward which people will lead us and guide us from this group into the future. When I would go from church to church, I always had a banner that hung in my office, and when I moved to Hyde Park, I lost it en route. I don't know where the banner went. It had been given to me by a seminary student when I was his senior pastor when he was first starting school. And the banner had these words: "To the one who believes, the last and the next wonder shall be greater even than the first." It's all ahead of us, positive upon all that has been, prepared for the needs of the people. Every time I would go to the hospital to visit someone sick and afflicted, I would come out and I would tell Diana, why is it I almost went to see them in dread, and I came out feeling better than when I went. Every one of these persons that you as a group serve, you not only enhance their life, you have enhanced yours. God bless us.